Hey guys, it's Mr. Dugal, and today we're going to talk about comparing rates. With rates builds off of ratios. We've learned about ratios this year. For example, if a ratio is 4 to 5, we know that there are 3 ways to write it. You could write it with a word 2, you could write it with a colon, or you could write it in fraction form. The other thing that rates get at, similarly to ratios, is that with rates, we're going to be looking at patterns. The important thing with rates and how it differs from ratios is that rates also include our units. So we might say, for example, $20 per hour. And how we read our fraction bar, just like we had with ratios, how we read it with a rate is we read it as the word per. So here's an example of what we're getting at with rates, is we might have student A who works for $12 and makes $96 versus student B works for only for 4 hours and she makes $36. So there would be 2 ways to look at which student made more. The first way is what you're thinking it is. Student A made more because student A made $96 where student B made $36. 96 is greater than 36. However, that is not how we compare rates. How we compare rates is by looking at the actual units themselves and dividing down to what is called a unit rate. And a unit rate is a really big deal in middle school math. And basically what a unit rate does is it figures out how much something is something per 1. So this right here, from the very beginning, this was a unit rate. And the reason this is a unit rate is because it's $20 per 1 hour. You'll see as we set up our initial rates for student A and student B that they're not unit rates, because student A, for example, is $96 per 12 hours, and student B is $36 per 4 hours. Now our units don't have to be dollars and hours. It could be how many hamburgers you're cooking per student, or it could be how many pieces of banana you use for a peanut butter and banana sandwich. It can be any type of unit, but a unit rate must be per 1 of that item. So we have $96 per 12 hours and $36 per 4 hours, and both need simplified down to a unit rate. So while student A is making more money total, which student made more as a unit rate? As we simplify student B, we discover that student B makes $9 per hour, and that is simply because 36 divided by 4 is 9. Which leaves us with student A making 96 divided by 12 equals 8. Student A makes $8 an hour. So comparing rates, we know that actually student B makes a higher rate than student A. So that's the second way to look at it. So that's another way to look at it. If you were a student in this scenario, you'd rather be student B because they make more dollars per hour. Even though student A made more money, if we ended up working for the same amount of hours, we would discover that student B would eventually make more than student A. So we have dollars an hour. This is called a rate table. You'll get more in depth with this, but we know that for student B, at 1 hour they make $9, and at 4 hours they make $36. So at 12 hours, which is where student A, how many hours student A has worked, I could figure out that 4 times 3 is 12, which means 36 times 3 is 108. Student B, if student B worked the same amount of time as student A, student B would actually be making $12 more than student A. So that's just a quick introduction to how to compare rates to one another.